So this comes to us from That Park Place, and it just released today. I have not read this article. I just saw the headline, and I was like, "Ooh, this is Marvin Montanaro. I guess you could say friend of the channel. It's a very good dude and a hard worker, and doing great work over at That Park Place." And they said, "Let me bring myself over to it so it's bigger." Well, pause. Switch 2 forecast falls flat as Nintendo admits high price tag could hurt sales. So now we have our first acknowledgement, apparently, publicly, that Nintendo is concerned about their own pricing. I found this interesting. Nintendo may be worried about Switch 2 sales numbers. The Japanese video game company is signaling a more cautious outlook for its next generation consoles. In a newly published English translation of end of the year financial Q&A, Nintendo president Shuntaro Furukawa directly addressed why the company has set a 15 million unit sales target for Switch 2s in the first fiscal year, a figure that has raised eyebrows among investors and fans alike. Because you would think the successor to the Switch in the direct lineage of the family would have high expectations for the first year. Not that 15 million is low, but despite high pre-order interest in the US and Japan, along with global anticipation for the successor of the best-selling Switch, Nintendo's forecast is only marginally higher than that of the original Switch's 2017 launch numbers. Furukawa didn't shy away from the reason: price. Now, I will tell you guys straight up, I could be wrong. I could be very wrong about this. I would be interested to look back at this moment in time after 1 year of sales of the Switch 2 and see it surpass the original Switch. I don't think it will. I am quite confident it will fall well short. Not necessarily like Wii U territory, but like they're setting a 15 million sales target. I wouldn't be surprised if it was somewhere between like 8 and 11 million for the first year. I wouldn't be surprised at all, because again, after the initial pre-sale, pre-launch, whatever, and everything sells out right away, and then the second rush that will sell out right away, I feel like the third rush with the Switch 2 is going to really be a stark contrast to what the original Switch was, where the original Switch kind of felt like a Wii, where it was like very hard to get one for a very long time. I don't foresee that being a situation with the Switch 2. And again, because what they say here, price. Nintendo Switch 2 is priced relatively high compared to Nintendo Switch, so we recognize that there are corresponding challenges to early adoption, he admitted. While the company aims to replicate the success of the original Switch launch, Nintendo appears aware that the higher price tag may pose a barrier to casual gamers and budget-conscious families, a demographic that was the key to the original system's runaway success. And again, I would say the problem they're going to run into is, I don't know this yet because I don't have the Switch in my hands, but the Switch 2 really needs to blow you away for it to be like, oh, I'm going to now upgrade to that next console, especially when there's such a high install base of the original Switch, and you already know that most games are going to be made for both consoles for the foreseeable future. A lot of people are not going to have much of a rush to run out and get the Switch 2. David Kelly says holidays will decide. Well, I think it will be a very hot seller at the holidays, but I wonder around other times. You know what I mean? I wonder. It is curious. To counteract this, Nintendo is bundling key titles like Mario Kart World with the console and emphasizing continuity through backward compatibility. Switch 2 can play compatible Switch software, so there's continuity between the platforms, Furukawa said. Yeah, but that's not a buying proposition. because I already have a Switch. So telling me if I upgrade to the Switch 2, I can go back and play my Switch games on it. I'm like, well, great. I hope so. Damn, that would be retarded if I couldn't. But why would I go out and rush to buy a Switch 2 when I can play the games on it that I already can play right now? That's not like a big selling point, but it's one of those that needs to be there. But that's not why people are buying it. Clearly trying to reassure both players and investors that the leap between generations won't leave anyone behind. Still, Furukawa warned that sustaining momentum will be the biggest challenge. Even if there is momentum around the launch, we know it will not be easy to keep that momentum going over the long term through the holiday season and beyond, he said. Wow. So they're already admitting here that they're going to have a struggle session in selling Switch 2s in the long term. Wow. That's interesting. This acknowledgement hints at internal concerns about the long-term demand, especially if the initial surge from hardcore fans and early adopters tapers off before the holiday shopping boom. In a gaming market crowded with powerful alternatives and shifting consumer habits, Nintendo may need more than strong branding and legacy software support to maintain interest. I'll tell you this too. With like the Wii and the original Switch, it was priced at a point where it was higher than what you'd like to spend on like a big gift for a kid or your best friend. But people would be like, you know what? I will do it because, I know my kid really wants it, or I know my best friend would love this. The Switch 2 is out of that price range now, where it's only like the very wealthy people would be like, yeah, I'm just gonna buy this for my kid for Christmas. It's like that's a lot of money on a gift. Like $500 before tax. You're talking almost $600 in California out the door for what ultimately ends up being a higher quality version of what most people already have. That's a major concern. Lenny Hondo says, out of the cool purchase price range for sure, right? And Sol Kino says, multiple $80 games for each kids. Yeah, that's the other thing. On top of buying it, you're also now buying into an ecosystem of games costing upwards of $80 so far. Like, who's to say Nintendo isn't going to charge $90 for the next Mario Odyssey 2? Like, who's to say that they're not going to go to $100 for the next Zelda? They could, and they know people would buy it. So the company also clarified that the forecast wasn't based on any external production issues or geopolitical factors like tariffs. In order to achieve sales of 15 million units, we will need to manufacture the hardware in quantities greater than that. We are working to strengthen our production capacity so we can respond flexibly to demand. That's interesting because they're saying earlier they're concerned about hitting the goals, and then they're saying down here we need to manufacture more to meet the demand. It's like, well, I mean, if there's a demand. Asian Swordmaster says $151 for another remake of Pokemon Red Blue. I see what you did there. Furukawa also responded to critiques that Switch 2 lacks innovation, suggesting that while the new system may appear similar to the predecessor, it has been redesigned from the ground up with the company's signature hardware-software integration. These are products very characteristic of Nintendo, packed full of our development team's dedication to quality through various creative efforts, he said, which, to be fair, I don't doubt any of that. But the problem, again, that we're running into is this enough of a leap and enough of a different product for people to drop over nearly $600 after taxes on? Is this, plus that doesn't include the other games or another controller or the online service that you now need to pay for. Like you're talking $1,000 out the door before you even turn your system on right now. That's a lot of money for a lot of people. I almost feel like Nintendo is doing so well financially that they're kind of like losing touch with what people actually like make and can afford. And my brother said something to me the other day that made me really think, because if you're spending like $1,000 after taxes on things, that's really like $1,800 earned, like in the real world working, because you have to pay taxes on everything that you earn, and then pay taxes on the things that you buy. So you're talking between $1,600, $1,800 to buy $1,000 worth of products. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. And that's USD, even more expensive in Canada. Like Hypernauts brings up. Good point. In other words, Switch 2 may not revolutionize the console landscape, but it aims to become Nintendo's new standard. The question is whether a more expensive, backwards compatible, and conservatively forecasted console can reignite the same magic that propelled the original Switch to become one of the best-selling systems of all time. I remember thinking, like, when the Switch came out, it probably is my favorite system. It probably is. I mean, outside of like PC, where you can just play everything on PC. But like as far as like a console, the Switch, if you count the back catalog and everything that it can play on it, the original Switch is up there with the best consoles of all time. Effendi, good point. The kill switch puts me off. Yeah, we talked about that the other day, where Nintendo can now brick your Switch 2 if they detect that you're tampering with it, which, yikes. With all eyes now on Nintendo's official reveal and launch window, the company is walking a tightrope between satisfying early adopters and maintaining long-term mass appeal, a balance that may ultimately define the future of the Switch brand. Do you think Switch 2 will see strong sales numbers? I think it will see like formidable ones. It'll probably get between 10 and 12 million first year sales. It probably will. But they're saying 15 million. I feel like that's a reach. I feel like that's a stretch goal. It could, of course, anything could happen. But 15 million units is a lot. That's a lot of units to sell in 1 year. Especially when you consider it has a predecessor that has a large install base. You're expecting basically everyone that bought a Switch to upgrade to a Switch 2 almost immediately. And I don't know if that's necessarily happening, especially at the current price point that it's at. But it'll be interesting to see what they report for sales. If I had to throw a dart and guess, I would say, I'm saying between 10 and 12 million. I'll say it will sell 11 million units in the first year. That's what I'll guess right now. But we'll see. We'll see. The Video Game Collector's Field Guide. That's Tristan Ibarra, video game author extraordinaire, is not only in the chat, but also donating $2. And he says, Facebook sent you a chart on Consumer Confidence Index. All right, Tristan, I'll play your game, you rogue. This is the Consumer Confidence Index, which I guess tallies their expectations based off of general sentiment. And we have price at launch in $2025, so adjusted for inflation. Damn, the Neo Geo adjusted for inflation is $1,600. I mean, I guess that makes sense because it was like 800 back in the day, so, or 600, which felt like 800. But yeah, that's not very high. But at the same time, the Super Nintendo was pretty low, and the Super Nintendo is one of the greatest systems of all time. So, and the Wii U is terrible. 66.9. That's almost as bad as the Atari 5200. Although, right at where the Atari 2600 is too. So, and that did pretty well. And the Intellivision was higher and didn't do as well. So, take this with a grain of salt, but interesting stuff. Interesting. Thank you, Tristan. Appreciate you, bro. I'm Batman for the 2. Switch 2 launch titles, the worst since Virtual Boy. Facts. Big facts. Although, to be fair, you could say the original Wii launch titles weren't that great. It was just like Wii Bowling that people were excited about. Like, would people really have looked back fondly on the Wii if Wii Bowling never existed? I don't think so. Like, as a general sentiment looking back on it, I feel like without Wii Bowling, you lose the casuals completely. And then you lose probably 80%, 75 to 80% of the install base of the Wii just from Wii Bowling. That was a lot of fun, though. And which blows my mind that they're making you pay for the Nintendo, whatever it is, to go into the console itself and play the mini games on it. It's like, just include it with the system, guys. What the hell are we doing here? Charging $10 for that? Freaking Nintendo. Yeah, we had the Twilight Princess, but that was alongside the GameCube launch, which kind of devalued it to me because I'm like, well, I can just get it on GameCube. So, Future Boy for the 2. Switch 1 was revolutionary. Switch 2 has competition. Good point. Good point. Switch 1 was first to market basically for that stuff. Then you had, is it the Steam Deck, obviously, and then the Rogue Ally, and there's like 3 other ones now that do similar stuff. So yeah, the Switch was all alone for a while. Sergeant Sapient for the 2. Once people got over the gimmick, the Wii was meh. I mean, yes and no. I think the Wii was incredible, but not for the reasons of Wii games. I love the Wii shop, and I love the ability to be able to play a back catalog of retro games on my TV easily. Like, sure, you can get ROMs on your computer, but then you need, like, I got my Steam, what's it called? The Steam TV or whatever they called that thing, where it relays the signal to the TV from the Steam. It's like a little box under my TV set for the Steam thing. And that works, but there's like slight delay, and you can't really have that with like Mike Tyson's Punch Out and stuff like that. Steam Link, yes, thank you, Steam Link. So the Wii was really good for just being able to have the ability to play retro games without hooking up all your old consoles to every TV. So